All right, Beehive. I had a lovely interaction earlier today on LinkedIn, early yesterday, goodness, with Tyler Denk, the beloved founder of Beehive. And he suggested that I actually pass on my feedback to you folks live as I'm using the Beehive newsletter platform fairly recently, and I just played around with the website editor. So wanted to run through it real quick, just do a quick conversation about it as I use it, and kind of just say hi. But before I get to that, I do want to say real quick that this drives me nuts. So to log in, I go to beehive.com, which is probably not the direct link I should be using, but there's a login button here. And when I click that, it opens a new tab. It does take me to the new tab, which is nice, but it opens a new tab instead of opening in tab. And I was wondering if that was intentional or necessary, or if there was any way I could get around it. Now, observe my baby newsletter, just barely getting started here. I want to say I've barely started this. I'm on my fourth full issue. It's been fun. I do love seeing that 200% growth year over year so far, which has been pretty fun. But we're here to talk about the website builder. And just for those who haven't used it before, you click on the website builder, you click on in here, and you go to a pretty amazing little CMS or content management system, which is just I like to think of it like the storefront version of building a website, where you're not building a custom building from scratch. You're not like putting a hot tub in the front door. You're not having octagonal windows, but you have a basic storefront that you can then decorate and dress up the way you want to. You can change the colors, you can paint it and do a little trim. But for the most part, it is a set structure that you can add pieces into. And since the whole goal of this website is to host a newsletter with some other things you can do with it, totally makes sense to be a pretty straightforward CMS. So this is a quick preview of what the website looks like. And just real quick, the first things that I did were jump in here, play around with the background photo, change the color of the header, add in a company logo. And there's a couple things I'm definitely going to shout out that I really, really liked about this. And I'm going to do some feedback as we go through it. Number one thing that bugged me is these preview boxes are set to fill instead of fit. So if you've worked hard on getting your cover photo for your article to fit in that space, it's a different space here than it is in other places on the site. So I want to say I fixed that and actually made it much smaller so it would fit in here. But if these defaulted to fit instead of fill, that'd be great. And that's just a classic image setting where the fill will zoom in until the full frame of the image space is filled. So in this case, it's a square. Whereas fit is if you have a rectangular image or a tall image, it'll zoom out just enough to fit the complete image so you don't have this cropping at the edges. Um, fill fills the space and doesn't give you any weird visual gaps, but fit will actually show the full image regardless of what size it is. So it's a judgment call either way, but for me personally, I always lean pretty hard on fit because the people uploading images want the full image to display. They don't want it to be squeezed in there so it's zoomed in on someone's nostril by accident if they had a tall, skinny photo, which I've seen before. So just to talk about this real quick, one of the first things I did was add my socials, which is done through a handy dandy manage your socials piece. Oh, actually, that just went straight there. Those are active working links. That's new. They of course have the visible option where you can preview the whole thing live, like what it would look like live outside the builder, and then also view it on a computer and on a mobile phone, which is nice. One of the big upsides of a CMS is that it automatically limits what you can do, but in such a way that it will automatically make sure that everything is up to code. Like if you think of building code for a storefront, it's the same for a CMS website builder. Everything is like it has to be within legal contrast limits, have to work on phone and computer. The stuff you'd have to do a lot of extra work on if you were doing this by hand. One quick thing I wanted is I saw the socials here. Since the goal here is to kind of promote your specific brand cross platform, I would really love to be able to have my socials on the top as well. I really wanted a way to add my socials in the header. This is one of the first places, before I get to that, couple quick things. This is from a template. I chose the one that had the color scheme that was closest to what I wanted. And then the first thing I did is click on some of these images, go down here to image. Ah, there you have the fit or fill. Nope, it's just fill. Okay. And then I chose an image, and then here it lets you change your image, but then also change the opacity here. Um, and just to be clear for folks on what the opacity is, 100% opacity means you can't see through it at all. It's a brick wall. 0% opacity means you can't see the overlay at all and it's just your raw image. And anywhere in between gives you some varying degree of your image or shaded image. As you can see, I've got it at 0.6. relatively high. The overlay is black, dimming the background photo so that my white text shows clearly. You can see this image, the default image is much brighter. This one too is much brighter than this background. I wanted the texture in there, I wanted the colors in there, but of course I wanted it to be dimmed a little bit so this white text would have enough contrast to stand out. I also was able to edit this text. This did have the default text in here, and I was able to quickly and cleanly edit that, and then you click Publish to save. Note if you change multiple things and don't click Publish. So I changed this text, and then I clicked on another piece to edit the nav bar, the header here, and it didn't save that. So that was one of the first things. I had to come back again to double check that and fix that too. And you can change the wording on this just with a double click and right inside the editor, which is very nice. You can also move these around a little bit and change the font sizes. Fairly basic tools, but they're here. And you've got a lot of options. Oh, hello. So you've got options where you can have sections that are on or off depending on computer versus phone. So you can make the website much more complex on a computer, and then much more trimmed down and basic on a phone. I wanted to keep the experience as consistent as possible, so I went ahead and left it at the default. And this is new. I'm still playing with this. A couple shout outs here. So the nav bar is one of the first places I had the most feedback. I did mention an auto save on your changes would be nice. I get how you can't necessarily do that with the whole thing of like publishing to the live website versus saving as a draft. But it would have been nice if there was a prompt or something to let me know that this change had not been saved because I had to do that twice. And initially went live with the wrong text, which is fine. So yeah, socials bar and the nav bar would be nice. This is odd to me that I have to go to a separate section to edit the nav bar because all of these other pieces, you click on that piece and then the edit options appear here in the right sidebar. But the header and the footer, you have to go to a separate section to edit, which isn't uncommon in a CMS, a CMS builder, but that it's the only things on this version of the CMS builder that you have to do that with, that was a little bit confusing. But we'll go ahead and do this. Edit navbar. And you can hide it too. You don't even have to have a navbar because it doesn't do much on this if you're just using it to show your blog. What's especially funny about it too is when you go to edit the navbar, you then can't see the rest of the page. So you're looking at the navbar, but not seeing it as it actually looks on your site. Now, initially, I tried to make it completely transparent, and so it would just be invisible with just some floating buttons. That didn't work. So I ended up having to make it black to make it blend a little bit. And then you can change your logo. Huge props on this. The logo space is actually long and was very flexible. I put a skinny logo in there. I put a wide logo in there. That space is the best logo upload section I've ever seen on a CMS. It's one of those things, it's your company's brand. If you're going to put it on there, you're going to put a company logo up there. You want it to look right. And huge shout out to Beehiiv. They made that part great. Normally, it looks funky or weird or zoomed in or doesn't fit right. And you have to look up or use a tooltip to find out the exact recommended size or scale or aspect ratio, height to width, to get that to fit correctly. But with Beehives, it worked first time. It was great. I really like that. And then you can play around with this too. You can choose an image, you can change, yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with that, which is pretty cool. There is also an AI chat editor I have not tried. Things were pretty straightforward to the point where I didn't need to do that. You can also change your fonts, of course, and this was still somewhat strange to me that this is in such a separate section. And here, actually, let's see, can we add socials? No. Let's see, socials. Now, this is something funny though, because the socials link is something that appears to be unique, and I don't see a way to add that. I can add a link, but I can't add. Hmm, interesting. Okay, and I could have customized this, not used a template but built it from scratch. But honestly, I didn't need to. The templates were fine, and this isn't a case where I wanted to build it completely by hand or to start over from scratch if there are basic templates already existing. So couple things there. So it is weird and off-putting to have to go to the edit nav bar over here, and then even weirder that the exit back to the main editor is on the opposite side. I actually got lost briefly trying to figure out how to get back there. And it's really a small issue, but on an otherwise super smooth experience, it stood out as being the one roadblock where I had to actually scratch my chin and be like, wait a minute, where do I go with this? Um, and that, I mean, simple website, simple conversation, that's more or less it. Sidebar, huge shout out to Tyler. I don't know if Tyler manages his own LinkedIn or not, but he's very responsive and that he was willing to just open the door to this kind of feedback to some random stranger who's writing a newsletter on his platform. That speaks highly, even if it's trusting a content manager to the point where they will invite that kind of feedback, or it's him himself, or a team member, or a team of team members. However that's being done, it speaks very highly of the company, and I really appreciated that. That's why I made this video. That's why I started using Beehiiv in the first place, was the actual um, the degree of involvement and social media encouragement that Tyler's putting out every single day. Great content, great CEO. Been very impressed. So that's it. We'll leave it there. Beehiiv team, you're doing great work. Happy to be on the platform. Cheers.